Greetings, programs. You know I had to do that. Welcome to Deep in the Plus. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside. Thank you guys so much for spending your Wednesday night with us. We really appreciate it. Business out of the way. WDWNT TV. You should follow it and like this video. We would like to have you like this video. And when I say we, I mean me and my good friend, Eric Martin.
Hello, Rob. It's an honor to be here. Great to see
Thank
you.
you. You know, Eric, you've only been on one other time, and you did the black hole with me. And as we were starting this off, you said I'm kind of like pigeonholing you into like that early '80s sci-fi stuff. But dude, I love these movies, and I love talking to you about these kind of movies.
I think that was like 3 years ago. It's been a minute. It's been
It
at
has
least
been a
two.
minute.
But yeah, Black
But
Hole and Tron. I mean, that's a movie night for you right there. Get your friends together, some popcorn and a little Tron, a little Black Hole. Perfect.
yeah, yeah. You know what? We were talking about Tron the other night on Park Center. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's a little show we do on Sunday nights. You should check it out sometime. But anyway, we had talked about Tron, the Tron roller coaster that is opening up on April 4th, which is why we're talking about Tron right now, really. This is the 1982 version we're talking about. We're not talking about Tron Legacy right now. Jill and I did a review way back when of Tron Legacy, but we're talking about the original, and this is the one that I loved as a kid, and I think for a while I was very hesitant to go back to it because I felt like it wasn't going to stand up, and we'll say at the end whether we feel like it does or not now, but when we were talking about it with Kamila, she said, I don't know what Tron is. Does that shock you that somebody would not know what Tron is, especially in the Disney community?
I think it just depends on context. Are you saying you don't know what the movie is, or when I say Tron, do you not know that Tron is a program that fights for the users? That program represented by a character in the movie. Is that
No, I think she meant the movie. Like she didn't have any context for the movie itself. And that was one of the things that we were like, what? How do you not know about Tron? Even accidentally in the Disney community, not knowing about Tron. Obviously, we've had 900 years for this Tron roller coaster to be built. You've had plenty of time to look up the source material on it. But I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
at the very
Uh,
least, I would think Disney parks had a Tron monorail like back what was that '09 or something like that. The Tron rail was in the parks. I mean, this has been present at Disney World since I think about 2009, where I don't know Google's existed since 2000, before 2009.
yeah.
But you know, people are gonna like what they like, and if you're not interested, I don't look up a lot of stuff about Duffy and Friends.
How dare you, sir? I'm Stella Luna for life. Hey, let me. So when we go to Disney Plus, you can look on here and see. Here's Tron Legacy, but we've got two other Trons on here. There's Tron Uprising, which was an animated series, limited series. I think it was supposed to go on a little bit further than it did, but that was supposed to be a continuation after the after Tron Legacy. But this is the one we're talking about right here, the original 1982 Tron movie. And when was the first time that you saw this movie? And please don't say this week.
Uh, in theaters, I definitely saw this in theaters during its original release. Um, my brother and I were kind of, we would, um, I was too young to go to the movie theater by myself. He was 3 years older, so we could go stuff like that. My mom was comfortable dropping us off. There was also like a place that she could take us. It was like movies that had kind of completed their theatrical run, but it was only I think it was like $1. You could go watch those. And I saw Tron at least twice, and I played the Tron video game hundreds and hundreds of times.
Now, and again, before we got on, you said that you had actually gone back to the Tron video game and taken a look at the light cycle component of it. But for those of you who don't know, the Tron arcade game, inspired by the movie and came out in conjunction with the movie, was four different games, and you had a joystick and you would push left, right, up, or down to go and do each mini game. So you had the one on the upper left here is the light cycle, which was always everybody's favorite game. And to me, watching the movie and seeing the light cycle scenes gave me anxiety back to the original video game of like you see
Yeah.
them going down the wall and you're like, I don't want to hit the wall, and you keep turning back and forth. And this was a fun game to do in the arcade. It felt like you were getting four games in one.
It was hard. And you remember you had a joystick, and then you had a knob that you could rotate. And the light cycle game was the only one of those games that you did not use the rotating knob at all. And you could play two players, but you couldn't play at the same time. So there's no like player versus player. You're playing against the computer.
The MCP.
Like you're racing light cycles against the computer.
Yeah, so here's what the controllers looked like. The large glowing joystick, which I feel like was more likely to break than any other joystick in the arcade.
This was the most attractive. That would just draw you in. That game looked so cool from far away. Always tough. You got to put your quarter on the screen and hope that somebody screwed up, so you got to turn next. You know?
Well, okay, so that's a big
lot
thing
of these
too.
people don't understand what I'm talking about.
Well, right. So that's a big thing too. A big part of this is the whole arcade concept of it. It really kind of takes you in so many different directions for a 96-minute movie. I mean, it is not a long movie. It's an hour 36. The original, this is the original. The Legacy, I feel like, is something like 210. But this one actually is a very quick movie, but it takes you through a lot of different aspects of 1980s culture, including the arcade, where when we first meet Kevin Flynn, he's trying to hack into the MCP, the Master Control Program, and when he's trying to get into it, he's using his own program known as Clue, and then Clue comes back in Legacy. Spoiler alert. So then, once we lose him there, the next time we see him is when his friends from Incom, Alan and Laura, are coming to talk to him about Dillinger, the guy who runs the company, has figured out that Flynn's trying to get into the computer. They don't know why. They go to his arcade. I'm thinking this guy's got a pretty good life if he's got his own arcade and he's got all these other worshipers there. Why does he even need to get back into the MCP to get his games back?
If you didn't grow up in the '80s, arcade culture was very strong. It was a place to be. And there were the big like corporate arcade places like Le Mans and Aladdin's Castle were kind of, I think they were owned by the same company. But you had your neighborhood arcades, and that was a social center, right? So the guy Flynn's really good at games, and he's a programmer. The guy that was really good at games was like the guy to be around, right? Because you're at this is the social center of your life, kind of going to the arcade after school or on the weekends or whenever you could, trick your grandma into giving you a roll of quarters. That was it, man. When I was, a kid growing up, that was the place to be. So to me, Flynn had it made. He's got that cool office overlooking his arcade. He's got dozens of games. It's full of people and everyone having a good time. Those were the days, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and in contrast, when you go to see Legacy and you see that it's been abandoned because we don't do that anymore, everybody's got apps and home consoles and everything, and you don't really need the arcade anymore. But you're right, it was kind of like that's the thing to do. And we still have them at Disney resorts. They still do arcades. So, I mean, somebody must still like them enough for that to happen. Chuck E. Cheese still exists.
I'm sure there are people watching that have really great memories of the arcade that was like where Steakhouse 71 is now at the Contemporary. That was a massive arcade back in the day. That was the place to be. I just drew a blank on what it was called. I'm sure you maybe.
I mean, yeah, like I'm sure you could Google it. I don't remember it, but I remember going. I remember because we weren't staying at the Contemporary. We went into the Contemporary and saw that arcade, and I was just like, "What world is this? And why can't we be here?" And then
so the same way that people sneak into like Yacht and Beach Club to use their pool is how people would sneak into the Contemporary to use their arcade.
Yep. I mean, it was everything. It's like, oh, this is the future. This is so great. And they do a little bit of a spoof on that in the Disney, the Mouseketeers Go to Walt Disney World. They're in an arcade, but I don't think it's the one. I don't think that's the original. I think is it?
Oh, it absolutely is. You just talk about the one with Lisa Welchel and
it seems so much bigger to me back in the day. Okay.
What?
I said it seemed so much bigger than that back in the day to me. So I guess I just thought it was kind of like a fake set, but that doesn't make any sense that it would be. So anyway, so Flynn is running an arcade, and he gets. There were a lot of little things rewatching this movie that I was like kind of got hung up on. One of them was he's when they first find him, he's surrounded by his like horde of followers who are so excited that he's going to be breaking the big, the big high score. As soon as he breaks the high score, he stops playing. Who does that?
I mean, maybe he proved his point. It's like a mic drop.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, you keep going, man. Although I guess then you'd have to like be able to bigger, better deal yourself from there. One of the things that I think was a little confusing to me as a kid, but watching back, it makes perfect sense, is the fact that each of the characters that we meet, whether it's Alan or Kevin or Dillinger or Laura or Walter even, are represented in the game as well. Very, very, very similar to Wizard of Oz.
Right.
Yeah.
As
So it's like,
Tron, as Ram, as Yori,
yeah.
even Flynn then really he's still Flynn. But
Well, but it was Clue in the
Sark,
beginning, and then Clue
yeah,
goes and gets messed up. Yeah, Sark.
you know, Sark. I mean, everybody, almost anybody with a speaking line that you meet is later in it as Tron. Even the guy that plays Walter Gibbs is Dumont. You know,
Hmm. Yeah.
all, all kinds of basically any speaking character in that movie is in the real world and is in Tron as a separate character who's either built by that person as the user. I'm going to confuse people who haven't seen this before. Maybe we should
Go back.
start slowly, which is to say the master control program determines that someone's hacking in.
Hmm.
He talks to Dillinger, who is a high-level executive at Encom, which is a software company, primarily a games company. One that exists is that essentially Flynn programmed all these games, created all these games, and Dillinger stole them. Now, Flynn is out of the company at this point. He's been pushed aside. And the master control program is essentially blackmailing the guy Dillinger that, if you don't do all this stuff I'm telling you to do, I'm going to, tell everyone. The AI has become sophisticated enough to blackmail people. Just basically telling him, if you don't do these things that I'm telling you to do, I'm going to tell everyone that Flynn created the game. It's worth a lot of money. Flynn could, essentially get a high position within that company and supplant Dillinger. That's the setup for why any of the rest of this happens. I know it's pretty formulaic. If it sounds like the plot to The Waterboy, where Henry Winkler has his playbook stolen by Jerry Reed, same type of deal, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, it when you break it down like that, it sounds as fun as the Phantom Menace. The whole idea that like Star Wars, but it's really about a trade federation dispute.
Right.
In this one, that is kind of the thing, but they're also we're stepping like, kind of dipping a toe in what the future of technology was across the board. And you brought up AI. I think that's very there's something in there about AI that popped out to me. So Walter is a character who we find out is basically, I think, the guy who started the company, Incom, in his garage. But this guy, Dillinger, is now his boss. So Walter comes in to talk to him a little bit and is saying things like, oh, back in my day when we did something, and Dillinger has no patience for him. And he says something about, the computers make all the decisions. And there's a time where Walter says computers and the programs will start thinking and the people will stop. Like he said that, and I thought, I mean, how many people have looked at Chat GPT and said, oh, this will make it so I don't have to think of, what is that headline supposed to be, or what is my social post going to be, or, how am I going to write this email? Chat GPT is doing a lot of that, and, it's probably just the beginning steps.
This is a very common sci-fi plot line, right? Whether you talk about Terminator and AI taking over the world, whether you talk about 2001, where the computer decides that he's not going to help him. We talk about this is one of the most common sci-fi tropes. So in that sense, it's not unique. What is unique is really the graphics and the idea that eventually Flynn is transported from the real world into he's digitized and sent into the computer world.
Yep. So when Flynn tries to break into the MCP with his clue program and he gets caught, um, the MCP shuts down all level 7 access. Alan, then we meet Alan, is a programmer who needs that level 7 access for his program, which we'll later learn is Tron. And then they cut to this cubicle farm like no other cubicle farm I've ever seen in my entire
God,
life. This is
look at that.
literally a football field of cubicles, right? I mean, I get what they were
That
going for here, but that's
it's
too
a little
much. That
absurd.
spatially, that makes no
It
sense, does it?
it looks like someone photoshopped a bunch of cubicles into Space 220.
Yes, it absolutely looks like that. Um, so he goes to talk to Dillinger. Dillinger's like, "Sorry, can't let you in. We're having some security issues." And he's like, "That's what my program Tron's supposed to do. He's supposed to look for security flaws and then also keep a check on the MCP." The MCP hears this and he's like, "No, no, we don't want any of that kind of stuff." So then Alan goes down to the lab to meet his girlfriend Laura, who is working on this experiment to digitize an orange, put it into a computer, and then bring it back. So again, now we've got
Covered
like
in a Willy Wonka movie a long time ago.
we've got we've got that idea, and then the AI thing. So there's a lot of technologies where they're almost guessing at the future, like all of these things could be possible. And in a way, I guess that's possible now because if you take a digitized item, you can 3D print it now, which we've gotten to that point. But you can't, like you said, Willy Wonka, like take Mike TV and take him and put his particles in and move him somewhere else. I mean, we're not there, but we're starting down that road, I think, with the 3D printing. But the orange never comes back, and I'm sad. Why does the orange never come back? The first time we
I
ever
don't
see
know. I
anything come
think
back,
it turned
it's
into a bird and moved to Walt Disney World.
all right. I'll take it. That's fine. We can do that. So they're introducing all of this technology, but really the reason they're doing it is so that they can have us educated enough to know this is why Flynn gets pulled into the computer, right? So that this digitizer thing works and it brings people into the computer. Okay, step one. And this AI is so smart, it can take Flynn and have a conscience and pull him in on purpose. So all of these things, the stage has been set for us. And by the time he gets in there, that's kind of the end of Act 1. So those first 30 minutes is us kind of learning about why he's trying to get in there, what is his motivation, what is Alan's motivation, what is Laura's motivation. The other weird thing that's happening is there's like kind of a weird love triangle. Like we don't know the history, but we know that Laura and Kevin used to be a thing.
Yeah, we know that. It just gets weirder as we go along, I guess.
That it does. So then there's the scene where we meet. Like I said, we kind of meet Kevin, and he's in his arcade, and he goes upstairs, and for some reason Jeff Bridges takes off his shirt. Like, did this need to happen? I mean, was he the heartthrob of the time?
Hey
Do we
man,
think
if you
that this
got, if
needed
you
to
got
happen?
it, flex it a little bit.
Because he takes off one Flynn shirt and puts on another Flynn shirt. That's fine. I don't know. He's just a
Who's in
cool
his
dude.
contract? He gets to take his shirt off.
Probably. And then they sit and he explains to them why he was trying to break into the MCP and that Dillinger shouldn't be running the place and that these are all his ideas, etc., etc. And they're like, okay, we'll go in and risk our entire jobs and everything to be able to break into this place, help you break in, and they seem to be okay with that, even though he seems a little flighty, I guess, because of his past.
It's a very harebrained plan.
But then
Right
they
from
break in
Jump
with this
Street.
door.
She parks right next to a vault door that's like 4 feet thick. Right, her
Yeah,
car parked right. Like I'm just gonna park right here. No one will know who broke in. If
right,
car is
parking
sitting
right here, and then the door is like unnecessarily large. You're like, does this door exist in any, like, even a bank vault? I wouldn't expect to be like that, and it's just the back
there.
door.
Well, I'll just point out that the rest of that building is made of glass. So all there's data centers everywhere in that building, and everything's made of glass. But for whatever reason, the back door is really thick.
Yeah, and then yeah, exactly. So then they come into we go back to this struggle between Dillinger and the MCP. So the MCP is they were kind of partners, but he calls Dillinger back from some business trip, and he goes, okay, well, MCP's calling, I better come. He comes back to his place. I would think the MCP could be available anywhere, but maybe we're not there yet, I guess. I mean, this is a computer that can run anything and everything, but he's got to specifically come back to his really cool Innoventions desk to be able to use that computer.
Yeah, and that's interesting because they've already set up a plot device whereby you can access that computer remotely because that's what they suspect Flynn of doing in the
There
first
you go.
place.
So he flies back because MCP said so. And then after all this is breaking out, MCP explains to him, hey, you know what? I'm going to break into the Pentagon next because I'm looking to take over the world. And he's like, oh, well, I made you. You need to stop. He's like, I've become 2,415 times smarter since you made me. And on top of that, I'm going to be able to run the world 600 to 1,200 times better than a person would. So, yeah, I mean, like, so we've got that arc too of like the AI is getting too smart and feels like um, we need to be removed from the picture. Very similar to the way that in Santa Claus 2 there were no nice kids. No, is that too big a
Oh,
joke?
the old Santa Claus 2 plot device. Yeah.
The Santa Claus 2 plot device. Yeah. So yeah. So then again, once they break into the place, Alan for some reason goes up to his cubicle and to wait, I guess, so that he can get in. And the plan is that they've been locked
I
out
think
of
he's going to
level
upload
7.
Tron, isn't he? Isn't
He's
he going to
gonna he's
upload
gonna
Tron?
communicate with Tron once Flynn gets
Yeah,
in level 6. He's going to be
okay.
able to somehow access and get him level
Obviously.
7. But for some reason, Alan needs to be at his desk for this. And they leave Flynn alone for I don't know how long at the workstation where he gets zapped. So that's a thing. What
That's
what you got?
an important note when you're trying to make sense of the plot of this. It is sloppy. It's really the story is kind of poorly told. A lot of assumptions are made that you follow what's going on, and it's very difficult to do so. One important point is time in this because when they're in the computer, it's the things that take a year inside the computer are like the blink of an eye in the real world. There is a point when we'll get to this point in the plot later, but where they're saying, "Hey, I can't do this for another 7 to 8 milliseconds," and that's like 30 seconds, and they still haven't made it. She said 7 to 8 nanoseconds. So what's a nanosecond? 1 billionth of a second, and takes 30 seconds for them to do like one of them. So it's like obviously time is moving very, 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 very fast
Yep.
um, inside the computer. So you could see there in compute while you're in there, you could probably live 100 lifetimes, and that would be like half a second in a regular day back in Earth. That is helpful when trying to understand what the hell is going on, especially at the end. But anyway, please continue.
You did a lot of math. You did a lot more figuring
Yeah,
out of
well,
this.
yeah. In fact, so since we're doing all these different tropes, we're going to hit every movie trope. I wouldn't be surprised if we hit the Superman 2 like fractions of cents being transferred into bank accounts by the time we're done.
Superman
Um,
3. That was Superman 3. Superman 2
Superman 3,
was
I'm sorry.
Zod. Yeah.
I apologize. If you saw the movie Interstellar, it plays with space and time quite a bit, and at one point they're on an alien planet where, because of the way time works, theory of relativity, and so forth, um, Christopher Nolan actually made like a ticking noise, and each ticking noise represents a certain amount of time on Earth. And because he's really nerdy, right? So he's going to come up with this type of thing that's going to be dead bang on to help kind of even though you don't know it, you find out later. Oh yeah, each time you hear that tick, that was 7 minutes on Earth, or that was an hour on Earth, or whatever they end up saying it is. And Tron, they're set up to do that, but obviously this is a more primitive time of sci-fi. People didn't have access to Google and things to do this. There's no reason to leave that Easter egg for anyone. But it could have been helpful to explain a little bit about how time works. They do touch on it in Tron Legacy, where they basically say, like, and I don't know, they talk about like an hour in here is like, a day out there or whatever they say. So Tron Legacy, they do address the time thing. It's only suggested, and it's up to you to connect the dots in 1982's version of Tron.
Did you see the Day the Earth Stood Still reference?
No.
So I don't think I've seen that movie. It's a 20th Century Fox movie, by the way. But
I don't think I've seen it.
there is a sign in Alan's cubicle that says Gort Klatau Barada Nikto. And I was like, that's got to mean something, right? And so apparently that is a thing where if something was to go poorly, you had to tell the robot Gort Klatu. I'm going to butcher that again.
Yeah, I would be dead because I wouldn't be able to get to the robot.
Because when I first saw it, I was like, that must be Klingon. And then I was like, maybe not. They wouldn't have done that. But I just think little things like that are kind of fun that when they put them in the game. You were talking about tropes. Here's something that really got to me in this viewing of it. And again, when I first saw this, I was a little kid, loved the movie, and I think it's because, and I've talked about this on the show before, I think there didn't used to be enough superhero movies. So anything that felt like a superhero movie, whether it was Star Wars or Tron or Condor Man or whatever, felt like, oh, I'm getting this, like a science fiction comic book hero type of a movie, and Tron is a hero. So when I watched this as a little kid, loved it. And then, like I said, I feel like the effects were ahead of their time, but they were quickly outdated. So then I felt like this isn't necessarily one I would recommend to people at the time. But in rewatching it, I have a different thought about it. But one thing that stood out to me really hard is there's a hard, slap-in-your-face religious overtone to this movie.
Oh, yeah, believing in the users and things like that. They're, in fact, you could say... you could say that MCP and Sark and all the guards kind of represent the Nazis almost. They are basically trying to cleanse any idea of people that believe in the users. So it's it's kind of a corny thing, but it's there. I mean, there's definitely like a religious connection there.
Yeah, there are a lot of moments in that I kept going, oh, wait a minute. And, like the moment where, once he's in the computer and he meets Ram, and Ram is not one we know in the regular world. Ram just happens to be a guy who's part of an actuary program who seems to be very good at the games. And so he's lasted a while, and he and Tron are friends, and then they become all of them partners. And there's a part where Tron has gone away, and it's Flynn and Ram together, and he's saving him, and he starts to fade away, and Flynn comes down and sits at his side. It felt like a very, like, I'm seeing God moment for Ram when he realizes you're a user, like, you are a user. And then there are some scenes where Flynn will do something, extraordinary to show that. But there is that one scene in the beginning where, before we even meet anybody in the real world, where Ram is talking to the one program, and he says, you believe in the users? And he goes, of course I believe in the users. Like, if there wasn't a user, then how did I get here? So I mean, there's a lot of those things. And then when the MCP says, hey, I've sent you a user, and Sark is getting a little bit worried about it, and then he goes, oh, I've sent you a user. He bothered me in the real world, so I sent him down there.
Yeah.
Down there.
Computer for hell.
Apparently, I mean, we've all had that, right?
Minor point. The Ram is played by the same guy who plays an Incom employee in the real world. So that
he does.
I don't know that he has a name, but yeah, that is a guy. And the Ram threw me off for a while because I was like, okay, we have a user in Flynn. We have a program in Tron. Then we have RAM. Oh, that must be the memory for the random access memory of a computer, and which was how people would have referred to memory back then. And I realized, no, RAM is actually the name of a program. has nothing to do. I thought we're just going to build a whole computer. We're going to run into a guy named Processor next, and maybe Video Card was going to be playing against us on the light cycles or something. I don't know, but no, RAM. The name is just a coincidence. It is like an actuary program. Very boring.
And maybe find motherboard along the way. You know what? I'm
Yeah,
assuming, and I'm just like scrubbing through this again. I'm assuming now that you're saying that this is probably him in the cubicle that asks, "Hey, can I get some pizza or something out of your cubicle, Alan?"
yeah, that
I mean,
probably is him.
because I mean, you barely see that dude when he's coming in and he's got glasses on. So maybe there was more to his story that got cut out. But like I said, this is 90 minutes, and so it really kind of breaks down very cleanly into three acts. The first act really like ends when Flynn gets pulled into the computer, and there's this weird, wacky like transition of him going, of all of us, I guess, going into the computer when that happens, and then he, you know, shows up inside the computer. One of the things that bothered me about that a little bit, that is in Tron Legacy, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance when Sam gets pulled in. That these programs come and they outfit him with this suit and all this other padding and all that
Yeah.
other stuff. Kevin just shows up.
Yep.
So, I mean, it seems like in the future we've gotten more complicated as far as your arrival into the grid. But it just showed this weird computer landscape. And again, this is one of those things I feel like dates this movie a little bit, is the computer generated stuff that you see was light years ahead of its time, but then very quickly computers started catching up, and we went from 1982 to what we see here, and then like video games got smarter, and then you start seeing stuff like in 1995 when we had Toy Story. So I mean, it progressed fast.
Yeah. Yeah. It had a look where now it almost looks like old colorized movies. Or did you ever take a black and white photo when you were in school or something in a photography class, and then you colored it with colored pencils and it looked like a colorized photo? That's what some of this looks like, especially Sark. His face is this real like black and white. And then the bright colors, it just looks really, really fake. But
Yeah.
I still think it's cool. I
Yeah,
still like it.
but all of this to me also looks like 80s Epcot. And
Yeah.
maybe that was part of it too. I mean,
Looks like when I
there's,
went to the mall, when you went to the mall and could make a music video, just looks like they're stuck.
please tell me you have one of those that we can see someday.
No, no, there is an audio tape somewhere, but no video.
Yeah, that part of it got really psychedelic, in an 80s kind of psychedelic way. And then Flynn shows up and he's in the computer, and now they're teaching him about the games, and they take him to a cell for some reason, but then they take him out and they're moving him back and forth, and he almost meets Tron, but he doesn't know he's Tron at first. Then he sees him fighting, and Tron's fighting two guys, and then he plays the world's most dangerous game of High.
Yeah, the disc throwing, the discus highlight. I don't
That
know.
was weird, right?
There's probably a reason why you don't play that in the video game.
Yeah, that's true. But there's also, again, back to the religion point, there's a point where Sark gets all of the new recruits, all the newbies in front of him, and is like, you have to disavow the users. And if you do, then you'll be part of our elite squadron.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's again a little bit weird. And then the fact that he always has to plug in and go back and talk to the MCP is kind of weird. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that scared me to death as a kid, this whole thing, because it seemed very, very dark.
it is dark, and when you think about this, that they're abusing programs, you know, making them play video games. Video games are something that we would, a kid in the 80s, like, yeah, I get to play video games. Literally, there, it's not the case. And in Legacy, in fact, the one of those guys, when he's told he has to go play video games, he jumps to his death rather than have to play in a video game. Apparently, that's a
Well,
really bad thing to do if you're a programmer. A program.
we've all been there. Um, so the best part I feel like that stood out of this original movie was obviously the light cycles, and I think that's again
The
why,
best part.
yeah, that light cycles are a huge part of Legacy, and then they're also a huge part, obviously of the parks and the attraction and all that. But you have the recognizers and then the light cycles, and it's this battle situation. But like I talked about, the light cycle is my favorite part of the video game too. So there's something about the light cycles in general that were just amazing at the time, and kind of captured everybody's imagination, to so much so that that's the basics of the attraction that's been made in Shanghai and now in Magic Kingdom.
Right. If this were Star Wars, these would be lightsabers. If this was Harry Potter, these would be wands. Right. These are the cool thing
Yeah.
that captures the imagination of kids. Right.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're pulling a tale of light that can kill people. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and those rules don't seem to always make sense to me about when they appear and when they disappear, because after they get out of the grid, like, or off of the field, there's no more trail. I guess they can turn it off, and then sometimes
Maybe
it
the
lowers
trail
and
is a
sometimes it
mechanism
doesn't.
of the actual game. Maybe the actual game grid is the
Maybe
some sort of magnetic field, or
that
I
would
don't know
make
what
sense.
silly pseudoscience you can come up with for that, but maybe it's only on that grid. And then in a video game anyway, and I think in the movie, once you die, your trail disappears. It
Yeah.
dereses with you.
Yep. That is true. So once they break out of the light cycles and they start to go on the run, they figure out that they need to get to the I/O tower, the input output tower. So technical for the time. We need to get to
There's
that
only one
input
left.
output. Exactly. There's only one input output tower left. So they figure out a plan that the three of them, Ram and Flynn and Tron, are going to try to get there, because if they can just get to Tron's user, Alan 1, then they can, he knows how to shut down the MCP, and they'll win everything. In doing so, they find this pool of water and they drink it, and that, I think, again, back in the day, was a neat effect for me. They like lean down to drink out of this pool, but it's really energy, it's power, and they glow brighter when they drink this in. I feel like that's the same with you in bourbon, or am I wrong?
I don't know. I've been sick for a while, so not as much bourbon.
I gotcha.
Still got the shirt. I still.
So then
But
after that,
that seems
go ahead.
cool. But just a quick note: that's how you get energy. Apparently, in that grid, on Tron Light Cycle Run, you go through energy gates. That's the premise, right? On your light cycles, you have to go through, I think, 5 energy gates, and then you win. It's kind of dumb, but it's a roller coaster. Go have fun.
Well, here's them drinking in that power. So, and then I love that Ram eventually decides to use his identity disc to put in there. That's another thing that I don't think they made as big a deal about in Tron, the 1982 version, as they did in Legacy, is how important the identity disc is. That's one of those things. It's such a neat feature from the original, but in the original it just looks like a frisbee with stripes on it. And that apparently you used to drink water from. But they were, Sark gives them this speech that says that everything you learn, everything you do will be on this disc. But we don't really see much about it. In the Legacy, it's like life or death if they have their.
But also, you use it as a weapon. Your entire identity is on this thing, but just throw it at people. Nothing makes sense.
Yeah, and they made them a little bit cooler and edgier in Legacy, whereas they were like
Yeah.
like a ring light is basically what they were, instead of a frisbee. But I think in Tron it was a straight up frisbee. It's got the edges on it and everything. So it was a neat idea, but yeah. So then when they decide they're going to go off on their way, they lose Tron along the way, and in kind of this big run in with Sark. And Tron disappears, and then Flynn picks up Ram and basically puts together a recognizer with his user powers. And again, that's where we get back to the point where it's a little bit weird. One of the things that I notice as the recognizer is that he's driving and it's coming around the corner is it's screeching like a car. It's not touching anything, but as it's rounding the corner, you hear it go, "Err, err," and I'm just like,
I mean, he
where's that noise
manifests
coming
this
from?
thing out of thin air, right? because he's a programmer and he knows how to create things. That why can't he like fix the leg?
Well, I mean, he only brought it together from the pieces that were
Yeah.
already there. So, but he learns to drive it, and it's very cool. And he's being chased by tanks, etc. And so he's on one path, and he loses Ram, and then Bit shows up. Bit, why weren't there plush Bits? This seems like it's
I want a
like
plush bit.
Bits,
Maybe there will be a plush bit.
right? Bit's
Because they're
whole
not
purpose
celebrating
in
this movie.
life is to be the sidekick, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's binary, right? He's yes or no. He's a bit. That's
Yeah.
exactly what bits are, and it's cute. He has a. Sorry, my dog is scratching. Um, he somehow it makes just the guy that says yes and no cute, like Baby Groot. Just only says one thing, one or two things, but yeah, there he is. Poppy, please stop.
Yeah. So Bit, I think there should have been more, again, more toys, plush, something where like it almost could have been a magic 8 ball that you could buy
There's
from a merchandising standpoint.
there's a whole mess of things that I don't know if they decided we just have to edit this down because it's a Disney movie for kids and we got to get it to 90 minutes where the bit is not present enough. There are things that go unexplained. There are things that are briefly shown and then for a long time you don't see anything, which we'll get to. And, I don't know. There are things they could have made the movie make a lot more sense if they had sat down with a focus group of kids and asked them if any of them had any clue what the hell was happening.
Well, was it made for kids, Eric?
I mean, it's a 90-minute Disney feature. I would think you have to think, yeah.
Okay. What kids are these made for?
I don't know. That looks like Big Bird got hit by a nuke, and R2D2 is having some terrible interrogations performed on him.
I think it looks like the Batman animated series Mr. Freeze, only his helmet is way too big. That's where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. So one of the things they've been talking about in the chat, and somebody talked about right from the get-go, is the musical score. And the score I find interesting because it was done by Wendy Carlos, and I actually have a copy that I bought at D23 on vinyl because I freaking love this music. And now, keep in mind, the Daft Punk music is insanely good. So the fact that they kind of went to Daft Punk, like it would be hard for me to choose this over the Daft Punk, but this one still has a lot of good feels in it. So
I don't know if you know this. This soundtrack, anything non-electronic, Disney insisted they used the London Symphony Orchestra for, which she was very opposed to, but apparently didn't have a lot to say. And then here's the thing. Okay, I know people like Daft Punk. I know people really like, the Tron Legacy soundtrack. They have a Journey song, Only Solutions, at the end credits for this. Like, it doesn't fit the movie at all.
yeah,
And then they just throw Only Solutions in there, and which is a great song. And all I can think is, man, in a different universe, I would like to walk off of Tron Light Cycle Run to Journey,
Your
rocking
Journey.
out Only Solutions, right? Not this Daft Punk stuff. This whole place looks too neat and clean. Make it look like those it'd be a lot harder to make it look like those crappy 1982 effects and play a little Journey. Have a Flynn's arcade instead of a Launch Depot and all this stuff. Maybe a missed opportunity there.
Tron Rock and Roller Coaster featuring Journey.
Yeah. Also, there was. I read this, I think, on Wikipedia or something. Supertramp was supposed to provide some music, and then ended up not doing it, which is why Journey ended up in it. And
Well, I mean, this song was written by Steve Perry and Neil Schon, so I mean, it's actually Journey music, as opposed to a lot of Disney movies. They may have somebody else write the music and then just have somebody come in and sing it, like Huey Lewis did for Once Upon a Time in New York City.
Right.
So yeah,
Supertramp was supposed to do it. They couldn't. Journey steps in. I don't know if it's just a song Journey had already had in the can, or if they wrote it specifically for this. But originally, the end music was the Wendy Carlos music, and then while it was in theaters, Disney sent out another cut with the Journey song at the end for some reason. Who knows why?
I don't know, but I was very excited to pick this up, though. Again, for those of you who don't know that, again, this was a 1982 movie, so in 2022, this celebrated its 40th anniversary, and so this was a 40th anniversary release of this album. So very excited to get that. It was neat at D23 to see Tron merch because of it being the 40th anniversary. So I got some pins. I didn't get a ton of stuff. That's one of the things I've been looking forward to the most about the Light Cycle run, is that I wanted to get some merch. I have some. Anytime I've seen Tron merch in my life, I've already gotten it. So Electronica, which we'll talk about later, Disney Infinity actually had Tron Legacy stuff associated with it. So I have Disney Infinity. I have this Vinylmation from Tron, and then I also have this mug that is a Tron Light Cycle Power Run from Shanghai. It still has the tag on it, so I haven't used it, but it has this neat little teacup thing that looks like the identity disc on it. So
if you're
Tron merch,
if you're interested, a week from yesterday, there will be an Eric Morton Tron action figure. I have an appointment to get the action figure made.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that yet.
I guess we'll see what it looks like. Hopefully it can make me like skinnier.
Whatever you want to do, my friend. I think I'm hearing a little bit of echo on your end. I don't know if you're hearing it too. But I did want to say that if you guys are just joining us, we're talking about Tron, the original 1982 version with Tron expert Eric Morton, and because you're such an expert, I wanted to throw a couple trivia questions at you.
Oh boy! All right.
Oh, you're excited. You're ready.
Am I still echoing?
Nope.
Okay,
nope,
cool.
We're good. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. In the beginning of this movie, when we meet Ram, before we meet any of the other guys, we meet Ram, and he meets this other program that he's explaining. It's the one that he said, "Do you believe in the users?" That computer, right. That computer program was an accounting program. What was his name?
I have no idea.
Chrome.
Chrome. I like the browser.
But it's spelled C-R-O-M. And I'm still getting echo. So, I mean, sometimes it's hard to listen to myself once, not twice, but I'm just putting that out there.
I'm going to move my microphone way over here.
Sorry about that.
Would you like me to put on headphones? Would that help?
Let me see. No, I can barely hear it still, but yeah, if you can do headphones, that would be awesome. In the meantime, let's take a look at this. I feel like this is an important thing to take a look at, that our good friend Eric Morton was on Tron and Flying Like an Eagle. So while Eric's working on that, let's take a look at what's coming up on Deep in the Plus. This week we have Tron, obviously. Last week, Alicia and I did National Treasure, which was a lot of fun. You should check it out if you can. And then next week we're going to have Toy Story 4, where Desi has promised to come on and give us her thoughts. She says she has thoughts. After that, Patrick's going to come on and talk about Ferdinand, because there's a wrestler in it. He has to have that one. And then Ron Deanna and I will be talking about The Sound of Music. So hopefully you guys will do a little bit of that homework, watch a little bit of those movies, and come back and hang out with us while we're talking about them. All right. Are you good? You can hear me, yeah?
I don't know. How do I sound? Is that any better? Less echo?
Yeah, you're good. If you can hear me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can hear you
awesome.
just fine.
Can you hear this? Dillinger's assistant's name. When Dillinger walks back into the room for the first time after the MCP has called him, what's his assistant's name? I can almost guarantee you will not know this, but I just figured I would.
I have no idea.
It was Peter.
No idea.
Yeah. So then Dillinger goes and he puts in his password for logging into the computer. Did you see what his password was?
No, just out of courtesy, I don't look.
Fair. That's fair. It was master. That's not very good. That's not very secure. No wonder they've got Flynn hacking in left and right and doing whatever he wants to. Um, when he comes back, because he was called back, do you remember where he was coming back from?
China.
Could have been China, but it was a computer electronics show. I wouldn't think he would have
Okay.
taken a helicopter from China, but could have been. Um, when Flynn tells Alan and Laura that he invented these games, he tells them one of them is Space Paranoids that he invented. Can you name one of the
Right.
other two games he mentions?
Oh man. Does he also claim to have invented Clue, or is that just in the second movie?
No, that's in the second movie.
Oh, oh, I don't remember. The names of these games are ridiculous.
They are.
Space
They're
Paranoids.
they're very 80s. It was Space Paranoids, Matrix Blaster, and Vice Squad. And I was like, Vice Squad? Tell me more about that one. That sounds interesting. Um, so those were the games that he said. He said he made those and a slew of others, but he only names the three of those. Um, and one last question, which you could take a guess at this one, and I think figure it out.
I'm batting zero right now. So.
Yeah, that's fine. You could take a guess at this one and probably do pretty well. When we meet Flynn and he and Laura and Alan are hanging out in his little like weird apartment, do you know what brand shoes that Kevin is wearing? And again, like I
Oh, they
said, you
got
can
to be
take a guess.
Nikes.
They were
Got to be
Nikes, yes.
Nikes. It's the
Absolutely,
80s.
they were Nikes. Yep, yep. I figured you'd know that one. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you doing that. Yeah, Matrix Blaster, SYX9 put Matrix Blaster in there. So, and then Tim knew that Master was the password. So, a lot of people, a lot of people playing along in chat as we hope. So, thank you for doing that, Eric. Thanks for taking the friendly fire. Um, once we get back into this movie here, it moves pretty quickly. Like I said, the first act is basically everything leading up to him getting sucked into the computer. The second act really ends at the point where Tron needs to get to that the IO outlet to be able to talk to his user, and he needs to get by the Guardian, who is Walter from the other world. So he goes up to the Guardian, and the Guardian kind of gives him a "you are worthy," and he lets him pass. And then he throws his identity disc up to Alan, who then we hear Alan's voice echoing and saying, "Hey, I'm going to put something on your disc, send it back to you, and then this is going to kill the MCP." So he gets the goods from Alan, and then like the rest of it is just like race to get there. Meanwhile, Flynn, who has lost Ram at this point, is discovering all kinds of powers he has, like the one where he goes and he drops down on one of the red guys and he sucks up all his red energy. What's that about?
Yeah. I don't know, but I want to just rewind just for a second because he's
Yeah.
essentially having a conversation with Alan. So he talks to Alan almost in real time, which, given what we know about how time works inside the computer, is really not possible to do it the way that they displayed it. I just wanted to point that out.
No,
Um,
that's what we want to do is we
so
want to point out those things.
so it's interesting that he sucks up the guy. But first of all, before he sucks up the red guy's energy, most of the people, when he gets into a fight or something, one punch and they just derez. So I don't know how this guy stayed alive long enough for him to suck up the red energy. This is supposed to be indicative of him somehow having power in the mainframe to create because he's a user. It's not really explained very well. It looks to me like just if he touches people, he can absorb their energy. It doesn't look to me like he's some master programmer and therefore has mastered the ability to create within the computer. So, again, something that they probably could have explained. Probably would have taken one line of dialogue to let me know this a little bit better. Instead, yeah, he just kind of changes colors. He's like, wow, look at this. And I don't know why that guy didn't derez, because everybody else that so much as got punched or slapped derezed almost immediately.
Yeah. Well, after he pulls his energy out, he does de-res and he kind of disappears into the floor. But it is kind of
Yeah.
weird the way he does that. And then Yuri and Tron are over on the other
Oh,
side of this
Yor
world
just
trying.
shows up kind of randomly, right?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Yori. I
Yeah.
didn't
Well,
know
I
you were
mean,
there.
yeah. Tron sneaks up on her and she's kind of in this trance where she's just repeating things that she needs to do, and then he like basically like holds on to her. It's like, hey, it's me, and she's like, oh, hey, and then all of a sudden they're having a regular conversation. Um, So once they go and by the way, the Cindy Morgan, who is the actress who plays Yori slash Laura, somebody mentioned this in the chat earlier that Cindy Morgan was also in Caddyshack as Lacey, which I'm not sure I would have remembered that, but now that you've said that,
Oh,
like I can't
Lacey
not see it.
Underalls. She's like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, wow.
yeah. There
That's,
you go. And I feel like those are her biggest roles. She was in Harry and the Hendersons. She was in an episode of Amazing Stories and an episode of The Fall Guy. Some very 80s stuff. Chips. She was in Chips. The
oh
Love
yeah,
Boat. She was on
Chips.
an episode of The Love Boat.
Come
Man,
on,
she
what a
ran the
career.
80s. She ran the 80s gamut. Yeah. So once you go back into once they go back in and they're like partnered up and they're trying to get to the MCP so that Tron can end this once and for all. Um, we don't really know what's happened to Flynn, and weirdly, in this fight as they board this weird
Don't we also
sun.
believe Tron's dead at this point? I
You
don't
mean Flynn?
remember. Never mind.
Oh
Yeah,
no! Oh
yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
no. That's later.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
they get on that sun ship or whatever it is on the rail, and once they get
the
on there,
solar rail ship.
yeah. So once they get on there, Flynn just happens to be hanging from the like the only one of the like lackeys that he didn't kill, who is still hanging onto the edge of the ship, and so they bring him up, and Tron touches him, and now he turns back blue, and then he introduces Yori to Flynn, says he's a user, and then he diverts the stream so that they can jump onto the other bar, and once they do, they head
Across the
in.
streams. Yeah.
They cross the streams. You don't ever cross the streams. They head in and they get hit by Sark's ship, and at that point is when we think we lose Tron, because Tron is
Yeah.
he's somewhere else, and they capture Yuri and Flynn. What were you gonna say?
It has to be pointed out that this is a little poorly edited, poorly directed at this point when you briefly see them fighting guards. You briefly see one of the guards he fights hanging onto the, like fall but hang onto the side of the ship. You're like, oh, was that Flynn? I think it was Flynn. I don't know. And then like they never show Flynn hanging on there. And then like 5 minutes later, he shows up like, oh, hello, I didn't see you down there. Like it just seems a little awkward. Like I think a couple of beats are missed there, and it makes it a little confusing for the viewer. Like, did I see Flynn 5 minutes ago fall there and hang on? I don't know. And then you go, oh yeah, it is him. Doesn't it seem weird to you?
It does. It does seem weird. There's a lot of the end that I feel like falls apart a little bit. And again, maybe they were trying. Maybe there was more to it, and when they edited it together, maybe they were running out of money. Maybe they were running out of time. It was like there's this weird battle with Tron where he's trying to get to the MCP, and Sark stands out there and he's fighting him. Meanwhile, the MCP has been delivered all these programs he's supposed to absorb, and it's like here, let me go to this. Like, what is he? Why does he need to absorb these programs? Again, this is very very dark what they're doing here. So, um,
Yeah, and why does he look comical doing it? He looks like the Kool-Aid Man.
oh yeah. And then there's some stuff. There was a bug that they pass along the way, and it's a
The grid
grid
bugs.
bug, and
Yeah.
they seem to have no purpose whatsoever other than to exist for a second.
Just to show they could do it. They're in the video game. One of the levels of the video game, you do have to avoid grid bugs. But yeah,
But the
they're
grid
just in
bugs
there
look
to show what they can do.
they look to be hand drawn when I was looking at that. Do you disagree? I mean,
It's hard for me. Like I'm not an expert in how that stuff is created. But yeah, they move a little differently than the rest of the animated stuff in the film, I would say. So you never know. The body thing is another. The programs being lined up as bodies just is kind of another trope. Although maybe Tron's first. Remember, Cocoon was a few years later after Tron. I'm really digging deep in the '80s. But Cocoon was a movie where they kind of kept human bodies on. The Matrix does this. Um, heck, I just saw another thing the other day where they just keep human bodies around. I don't know what's up with that, but reminds me of the Matrix. Where they have them all in their little uh, eggs or whatever they're
Yeah.
in the Matrix.
Um,
Let's keep them, but I don't know if the MC. Here's another kind of plot thing I would like them to explain a little better to me is um, it appears that the MCP needs all of these programs delivered to his main area so he can absorb them and become powerful. However, the rest of the movie, he seems to be indiscriminately killing programs for sport with all his video games and all this other stuff. So I don't know if they've just determined that they're just going to kill the programs that believe in the users. I think that's what we're supposed to infer from all this, is that these programs, the reason they're being destroyed and derezzed in all these barbaric games like the Colosseum type of games, is maybe because they believe in the users and they don't want them around anymore. But it sure just seems like they indiscriminately kill programs, and then all of a sudden they're very valuable and he needs to absorb all of them.
yeah, SYX9 was saying he's repurposing them. But it did look to me like he was absorbing them. So if he's repurposing them, it didn't seem to like that they made that too clear. But one thing I would
No,
point
I
out
think
too
I think
is,
you're right. I think he's right. There is some sort of mention of that, but it's still he's still gaining power from having all of these programs around, and
yeah,
and then he's killed countless programs.
there was one thing though that when Sark gets his like death blow sort of ish from Tron, and then he falls to the
Hmm.
ground. It looks again very hand drawn ish. It looks like what was
Yeah.
that movie Heavy Metal? Like
Yes.
it looks
Yes.
kind of like that to me. Like
It
the
briefly looks like Darth Vader when he
almost
gets
as
his
if they
wig
were
split.
saying, "Hey, we want to do this CGI, but either A, we don't have the time, or B, we can't figure it out, and so we're going to do it hand drawn because we know how to do that."
Hmm.
Um,
Look at
even
that
like the
again, though.
particles.
He takes one to the dome like Darth Vader. I mean, right splits the helmet. I'm like, oh, we might see this in a year or two. In Star Wars, maybe Star Wars took a hint from Tron. I don't know, but not to be denied. Then Sark is like, honey, I blew up the Sark, and Super Sark shows up, which
Yeah.
is just hard to
Uh, yeah.
understand.
Josh says in chat, Sark, all of my functions are now yours, which is, basically he was saying, hey, protect me out there, man. Protect me while I'm doing this like mojo
Yeah,
that I'm doing that's going to make me more powerful.
he transferred his abilities to him, right? Is that
Yeah.
I don't know. It didn't help. It just
Um,
made him get big. It didn't make him any
yeah.
tougher. It just made him grow by 112% or something. Like not to a giant, not Ant Man, right? Just kind of like a little bit, just enough
Well,
to
that's what I'm saying is that it
just
felt
enough
like
to be
the
big.
end was rushed. Like that there's a lot going on and a lot to resolve all at once, whereas there's scenes like them drinking the power that seemed like they took too long to do that. Like if you needed to cut for time, feels like there's some of that stuff that was a little unnecessary. This is we need to know all of these things that are happening. Flynn and Yuri are on the ship that's about to be derezzed, but he's going to save them. And then there's this awkward part where he kisses Yuri. So meanwhile,
That's weird.
he's gonna sacrifice himself for Tron by jumping into the MCP and giving him a window. But then meanwhile, he's up on the ship making out with his girl.
Which is his friend's girl, kind of, because it's really Tron's girlfriend, right? Oh, so much of this is weird, and 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 part of it is that, right? That relationship, that whole dynamic. Part of it is that the movie is called Tron, but it's really more about Flynn than about Tron, except it's Flynn's the protagonist, but he's trying to help Tron. I don't know. It's almost like they signed a big name Hollywood guy, so they're like, well, let's just give him a bigger part because we've already cast the guy who's playing Tron. And then
Bruce
the movie
Boxleitner.
turns into something. Yeah. And then the movie, who did ride Tron Light Cycle Run the other day, by the way.
Yeah, I
Um,
saw that.
and what the movie feels like is that it was a 2 hour movie, and some executive came in and said, I need you to cut this down to an hour and a half, and I'll give you an hour and a half to do it. Here's some scissors, and I just feel like there's the pacing is a little off there. The ending is, it's not really clear what happens at the ending. We know he kind of distracts MCP so that Tron can throw his disc through a little gap.
Yeah, which we knew was going to happen
But
because
it's
Alan said this is how you stop him. And then once
yeah.
once they do that, he stops spinning around, and it's an old King Tut is basically.
You know what it looks like? It looks like the Cowardly Lion in the Wizard of Oz.
But he's
It's just
typing
him.
like Mavis Beacon.
Yeah, maybe that's the program that he loves. The
No, he
most.
was a
I
chess
don't.
program.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
don't
that
know.
that that
There's a
that
lot
part
going
is
on here that.
yeah, that part is a little weird. And then at the end when he's disappearing here, they show him, and then he like backs out of the hole.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay. Again, I don't remember that. I just remember like, yay, Tron won. Like that's all I cared about as a kid. Tron won. Tron has saved us all.
yeah,
He has made the world user friendly.
yeah.
Get
Or
it?
Flynn
Because
won. I don't really
they're
know
the
who
users.
won. I guess they all won.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Ultimately, Flynn wins, right? Because he gets a helicopter out of the deal.
yeah. And you know what? Then after it's all said and done, this makes Flynn show up back in the real world. There's a dot matrix printer that prints out this thing that basically says, "Hey, Flynn was the guy who wrote this, not Dillinger." And he's like, "There's my proof." Is that your proof? You could have typed that.
I
Like,
mean,
is
that
that?
would stand up in any court, just a printed out piece of paper, right?
I mean, it does
That's all
also
you
show
need.
up on Dillinger's desk, but again, same thing. That doesn't seem like there's proof there. But apparently, it was enough that Dillinger's ruined. Flynn becomes the president of the company, and then we're left as a pan across to this world where we see the city, but the city as it gets darker and the cars are moving starts to look like the grid. So I guess foreshadowing of like I guess the world we live in or a sequel to come at some point. But years later, then when Tron Legacy shows up. I loved that movie because I feel like it was all the things I liked about Tron, and yet they were doing them. There wasn't a reboot, and it wasn't quite a sequel. You could watch Tron Legacy without having seen Tron, I feel like, but there were so many throws to it, like that it's Dillinger's son, like that it's Flynn's son, like that it's, a
And you
clue
see who
still in there.
Dillinger's son was? Uncredited Killian Murphy.
Yes, which means they probably were looking to do something bigger, I would assume, right? Like in a
I
third
don't
movie?
know. I mean, his star was still rising at that point. I think when it came out, but it's possible. I
Yeah.
love that they took the light cycles to a whole new level, literally, like with different levels and all this kind of
Right.
stuff. Visually, it's really cool. I'm not sure it's a great uh, film, but it's fun, right? I think there's room in my life for films that don't hold up to a lot of critical analysis, but they're fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yep. No, you're right. And honestly, this is a little bit of that for me. Is this movie because there's a lot of it. Here's his proof that he's almost killed himself to get. Is
That is
that?
all the proof you need. One
That's
time I
all.
printed out a card for my dad that said "World's Best Dad," and once it's on dot matrix, it's law.
It's
So,
official.
yeah,
Um.
congratulations, Dad.
So I feel like that. The '82 Tron is. I feel like I would classify the original Tron as a cult classic because I feel like it wasn't a humongous blockbuster. It's not something that everybody embraced, but it's one that people like me who saw it as a kid who loved it did things like Electronica. So Electronica was a nighttime show they did at Disney California Adventure to keep half the park busy while the other half watched World of Color. I don't know if you ever got to do Electronica or not.
No, I
It
did not.
took place down on a Hollywood lot. So that was later
That's where
replaced
they
by
used
the
to
Mad
have
Tea
that
Party.
Alice in Wonderland crazy acid trip
Yeah.
party and stuff too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe it was Electronica first, and then they brought in the Alice's Tea Party, the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, and then did it like that. And then, years later, when Shanghai was being built, they did what is called Tron Light Cycle Power Run in Shanghai. So when that happened, I was super jealous that Shanghai was getting this roller coaster. There's a lot of cool things that looked cool that after we heard people who went there said, it was okay, but I think most people liked Tron. Um, and now we are mere days away from the opening, the actual opening of Tron Light Cycle Run at the Magic Kingdom. And you, sir, have ridden this thing, what, 3 times now?
Yeah, I've done it 3 times. I did.
Um,
I was invited on a cast member preview. I did an AP preview, and now it's soft open. I did just a regular like virtual keyboarding group soft open.
and then, like we talked about, like the new shop's not going to open until May 1st, but they're going to have like a pop up shop over where Stitch, I believe, is, and then
Yeah, and they're going to have that. You'll be able to do, I think, in the old Tomorrowland Light and Power, which is now the Launch Depot. They'll be able to do the what do you call it? Create an action Tron action figure for out of yourself, which would be fun.
nice. And you're going to
I
do
thought
that.
about doing it as the Florida man, wear the mullet in, and like maybe shave out some chops for the day. I don't
Um,
know. I don't know.
all right. So yeah, again, the reason we wanted to kind of revisit this original Tron was because of the attraction opening up, and because it's one I've wanted to do. Again, as a kid, I loved this movie, so I wanted to go back and see if this was. Um, if it was what I remembered it being. I love and I talked about this in Park Center, the aesthetic of Tron, like the glowing and the black and blue, all of this stuff I think is amazing. So I'm looking forward to some of the merch that's out right now looks very, and I said this too, looks very Guardians of the Galaxy. I want to see a lot more of like just like the Tron, and I know there's a jacket that kind of matches what Sam is wearing in this one. So all that stuff should be cool to do. But again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Eric, for helping review. But we're going to have one big question for you. And this is really what the people want to know from you. Eric Morton, would you recommend this movie?
I think absolutely. I mean, it is not a great film. It is not a great piece of cinema, but it is important. They did break some barriers. This and kind of The Last Starfighter, kind of with that blending of animation and reality and the computers and all that kind of stuff. And it's fun. It's don't overthink it, right? It's just something you can watch and root for your people and not really, even if you don't really understand fully what's going on. I think it's just good. It reminds me of being a kid. It's that early 80s Disney, which is they were doing a lot of weird stuff that they probably wouldn't do now. So I love they took a chance on something that was way out of left field and gave it to a director who was in way over his head with his own ideas, and they came up with something that created some iconography that has endured for a generation now. So, and now we have a roller coaster for it. I think it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So I've said this before that when we did Tron Legacy, I love that movie because of it furthering Tron into like more modern. And so I think I like it more than most people do, but I would encourage you to go back and watch Tron Legacy. But for this one, I always kind of said I'm not really sure I would recommend this because of I didn't know if it stood up. In watching it again, I would recommend it because I feel like it's still telling a good story. I think a lot of people look at it and it's a little dated and it's a little slow at points. And so they probably are like, I'm not really sure that that's for me. But I think, again, at 96 minutes runtime, the fact that this is the beginning of it, the fact that this was groundbreaking, there's a lot of movies we watch because they're groundbreaking. I think this was one of them that you should probably go back and watch. And it's a fun movie. I don't think that there's anything, any harm to it. I do think it falls apart a little bit at the end, but at the end, they win, and so that's really all you want to happen. But again, hopefully, any of you who have a nostalgic tie to this, went back and rewatched it and felt the same way we did. But we would love to get your comments after the video is over. Put them below, and let us know what you feel about Tron 1982. Does it still stand up? Was it your favorite movie? Have you never watched it before? I'd be interested in hearing from someone who had never seen it before. So we're going to have to go and get Kamila to watch this and make her watch this and then see what she thinks, although I'm sure she'll probably not have glowing things to say if we make her watch it. So, but again, I would say that this is one I would recommend to people, and it's a lot of fun to do. There's, again, the series Uprising. I know somebody in the chat just said that they watched Uprising, and that kind of introduced them a little bit to the world of Tron. The way that this goes, it's this one, and then Legacy, and then Uprising takes place after Legacy. And then there was supposed to be a third movie coming out with Jared Leto. He keeps telling people every chance he gets that he's going to be in it. So we'll see if that happens. But in the meantime, will there be a Boxed In this Friday?
I don't know yet. Probably not.
Okay.
Tomorrow night on WWE News Tonight, we're going to announce a surprise, which will give you an idea why I'm not going to have a lot of time to do Boxed In.
Gotcha.
So watch WWE News Tonight tomorrow for the finals of March Madness.
Yeah. Watch for this big announcement and finals of March Madness, and then come back and talk with us on Sunday night as we recap the March Madness. And give you some more Parks news. So with that, we've got News Tonight tomorrow night at 9, and then Sunday night at 9 is Park Center. So hopefully you guys will join us for those as well. Thank you for being with us. Eric Morton, thanks for coming back on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure as always. Go watch Tron, or play the video game, or listen to either of the soundtracks, or buy any of the merchandise. Fun stuff.
Just spend money on Tron. That's all we're really asking. And go ride it, because I cannot wait to ride it. I got to figure out when I'm going to be able to get
I have a Tron couch now.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You got it all. It's all glowy.
It's all Tron out. Yeah.
Good times. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Also, one last thing. We love our wigs, the WDWNT Interglobe Society. Thank you guys for being members. We appreciate you. If you want to know more about the wigs program, you can go to patreon.com/WDWNT. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.
Bye.